It was then that I grabbed a large rock and threw it through the windshield of Tom's car. That did it. His face went red and stormed towards me and tried his best to punch me. I did let him hit me a few times, and then I punched him as hard as I could in the stomach, which made him double over. Once he was dazed, I ran into the building and barricaded the door. Both Beth and Jennifer ran to the door to see what the commotion was all about, and I told them to call the police and tell them that Tom had gone crazy and attacked me. Meanwhile, Tom had recovered and was trying his best to break down the door and get to me. Hey there. So listen, I'm going to be honest with you and just say up front that I am not someone that you really want to know. I have a story that I want to tell you, but I'll just let you know from the start that I'm one of the villains. But maybe you'll understand why I did what I did, and while you may not approve of my actions, at the very least, you might understand my motivations. But yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself a bit here. Let me start off by saying my name is Clyde. Well, actually, that isn't my real name, but someone like me doesn't exactly go around giving out their real name to just everyone. I live in a small apartment building that has 4 units. Across the hall from me is a woman named Beth. Below me is the owner of the building, Tom, and across from him is Jennifer. Both Beth and Jennifer are roughly the same age as me, and if I wasn't a scumbag, I would happily ask them out. Both of them are simply gorgeous, but are as straight-laced as they come. Truly good people, and honestly, I can respect them for that. I mean, I live a life that tends to break the law, but I respect those people that can make a go of things without doing so. And Beth and Jennifer are just such people. However, our landlord Tom isn't. He isn't a criminal like me, but he isn't a good person either. Hey, Beth, Jennifer, both of you are late on your rent.
No, we're not. We're paid up in full.
Trust me, you are. But if you want to think of alternative ways to pay the rent, I'm sure we can come to an agreement.
Holy crap, Tom. Why do you always have to be so pervy? And no, we know for a fact that we have already paid. Why do you always do things like this?
I hated Tom. Beth and Jennifer were really nice people, and they didn't deserve to be treated like that. Tom was such a pervert and would make all kinds of nasty remarks. It really did bother me, but so long as he didn't act inappropriately. Well, any more inappropriate than he already was at least, then I didn't see a need to step in and do something to him, but I always kept an eye on him. More than once, I stumbled into the lobby and saw him casually glancing through Beth and Jennifer's mail. He never took anything or opened any letters, but it made me very suspicious of him. Then one day, I was in need of some money, and I knew that Tom was collecting rent from the rental properties that he owned. He owned 4 other buildings like the one we lived in, and he kept the rent money that he got from them at his place and deposited it in the bank the day after he collected it all. I knew this because I had followed him to the bank a few times after the first of the month and saw him deposit a large amount of money into his account. Money that I could really use. I owed a few $1,000s to an associate of mine in exchange for some drugs that I was going to resell and make a sizable profit. But I needed some extra cash, and knowing that Tom had it, I made the choice to sneak down to his place and take just what I needed. I snuck downstairs and made sure he wasn't home before I picked the lock and let myself inside. After a few minutes, I found where Tom hid the money and helped myself to just what I needed. He had it all in an unlocked safe hidden under his bed, along with a box of videotapes that were labeled after Beth and Jennifer. I thought it was rather odd, and so I took a couple of them as well, and then snuck back up to my own apartment, making sure to not leave any trace that I had been there. Once I was back in my apartment, I hid the money and then got ready to see what was on the tapes. As soon as I hit play on my TV, I was blown away with what I saw. It was a recording from inside Beth's apartment. Her bathroom, to be exact, and the tape showed her taking a shower. As soon as I realized what I was watching, I turned it off. Sure enough, when I checked the other tapes, I saw that they were the same thing. Sometimes it showed a camera in their bathrooms, and sometimes it was in their bedrooms or kitchens. It seemed that Tom had put cameras in a bunch of different places in the girls' apartments. Judging by the angles of the cameras, I assumed that they were in the ceiling lights and getting a bit paranoid. I checked the lights in my apartment and was relieved to see that there weren't any cameras in them, which meant that Tom only spied on the women in my building. Although judging by the amount of tapes that were under the bed, I had to assume that either he had been filming the girls for a long time or that our building wasn't the only one he had cameras in. I was incredibly angry. I had always suspected that Tom was a complete sleazeball, but I had no idea just how nasty he was. An idea suddenly came to me, though. If it worked out, then I would be able to not only get rid of Tom, but also make sure that he faced justice as well. I called up Beth and Jennifer and invited them over to my apartment. They were reluctant at first, but they eventually agreed to come over. I put the tapes on and left the room out of respect, and when I was sure the tape was done, I went back in the room to find both Beth and Jennifer incredibly embarrassed, but also furious as well.
How did you get these tapes? Why would you show us them?
I won't say how, but I took them from Tom's apartment. Listen, that pervert has tapes like these from all of his buildings. I don't know about you guys, but I love living here. It's a really nice building. But so long as Tom owns it, it's not a safe place to live.
But what can we do? It's not like he is going to sell it anytime soon.
I have a plan for that. All I ask is when the time comes that you back me up, no matter what. They reluctantly agreed. To be honest, I wasn't sure why they trusted me, but I think the respectful way I showed them the videos helped. And so I waited until it was time for Tom to collect the next month's rent, and while he was out of his apartment, I snuck into, and I stashed the drugs I had bought with the money I had stolen from him among the tapes that he had hidden under his bed and on the kitchen counter as well. And then I went outside and waited in my car. Once I saw Tom pull up, I waited until he got out of his car and was several feet away from it. And then I drove my car into his, with enough speed to cause some serious damage. When I got out, Tom ran towards me to confront me. "What on earth are you doing? You idiot, you totaled my car." "I did? Well, maybe you shouldn't have parked illegally." "I wasn't parked illegally. I was in my designated spot and you just wrecked it. Are you drunk or high or something?" "Of course not. But then again, I turned you down and didn't buy drugs from you." "What are you talking about?" "That's it. I'm calling the police." That was of course what I wanted, but Tom wasn't in the right frame of mind for what I had planned. It was then that I grabbed a large rock and threw it through the windshield of Tom's car. That did it. His face went red and stormed towards me and tried his best to punch me. I did let him hit me a few times, and then I punched him as hard as I could in the stomach, which made him double over. Once he was dazed, I ran into the building and barricaded the door. Both Beth and Jennifer ran to the door to see what the commotion was all about, and I told them to call the police and tell them that Tom had gone crazy and attacked me. Meanwhile, Tom had recovered and was trying his best to break down the door and get to me. That was when the police showed up, and once they had calmed Tom down, Beth, Jennifer, and I went outside to speak with them. The officers split us up, and while the one that got the girls and my side of the story, the other officer went and spoke with Tom. I told the officer that I accidentally ran into Tom's car, and he blew a gasket and even threw a rock at me, but thankfully missed and hit his own car. Both Beth and Jennifer confirmed that this was the truth. I then told the officer that Tom had already been upset with me because he had tried to sell me drugs, but I had refused to buy any. Between my story, the bruises that were on me and the girls backing me up, the officer became suspicious and left to check Tom's apartment. When she came back, she threw cuffs onto Tom and then threw him in the back of her squad car. I assumed that she had found the drugs and the videotapes, and while she hadn't watched them, she surmised that they weren't anything good. With Tom arrested, we went back inside and celebrated in my apartment. The girls were confused about what happened, but were glad that Tom wasn't in the building. Sure enough, more police came the next day and cleared out Tom's apartment, finding more and more evidence as they did. For a few weeks, we didn't hear anything, but then a news reporter got a hold of the story and announced that Tom was looking at going to prison for the rest of his life. The drugs charges against him, which was a frame job, I know, was the least of his concerns. After the police reviewed the many tapes, they found that Tom had indeed placed cameras not only in his tenants' apartments, but also all over the city. To make matters worse, he had made a website where he was selling compromising photos and videos of hundreds of different women and had been doing it for years. The man was quite wealthy and had used that ill-gotten wealth to buy all of his apartment buildings. Because of this fact, the police seized all of his assets, which included the buildings and all of his money. Soon after, the police held an auction and sold the buildings at a reduced price out to the public, and seeing an opportunity, I bought our building with some ill-gotten money of my own. My first act as the new landlord was to reduce Beth and Jennifer's rent by half. After all, I had paid peanuts for the building, and I really didn't need to charge them a lot to make money. I then rented out Tom's old apartment to an old couple on a fixed income. To be honest, they pay less than Beth and Jennifer, but I think the ladies would be okay with that. So now I get to live rent-free in a building that I own. Of course, I use the building to help hide where I actually get my real income from, but like I said, I'm not the hero of the story. I just sometimes do the right thing, but usually in the most wrong way possible. But now that I have a house that I get rent from, maybe it's time to stop what I actually do. What do you think?